Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Shelley Tasker Show, coming out of speakfreeradio.com. It's good to have your company. There's a bit of an echo. I don't know if you guys are hearing that. Good evening, Richie Allen.
How are you doing, Shelley? Nice to see you. Thanks for inviting me on. Yeah, I did hear a little bit of an echo there.
Bit of an echo. Things have
Yeah.
always got to go wrong first time, haven't they?
No, it's gone now. That's pretty
It's
cool.
gone.
Well done.
Hallelujah.
You have an
Anyway,
engineer. You have an engineer. I'm shocked and appalled. Would it
you could
word that
have
I have an
one.
engineer? Me? No, I couldn't. But it's really good to see you. How are things down in Cornwall there?
Yeah, they're good. They're good. It's been hammering it down, actually, and I've just been a bit like, please let the power stay on
Yeah,
just
and
for an
here.
hour.
And here.
What about in Salford?
It's belting it down as we speak. Might be just clearing a bit now. We've had thunder and all of that, but that's good. It's good for the gardens. Got
Well,
to
yeah,
be
because
thankful.
you've got a lawn now, haven't
I've
you?
got a lawn that I've been
How
cultivating
posh.
for about 7 months, and it's lovely. And I'd post photographs of it, but I'd be concerned it might give away my location. Yeah, I went from a really ratty, cheap, dreadful AstroTurf that was horrendous, the previous owner of the property, to finally getting gardeners to put in a lawn. And it's actually quite lovely, yeah. And when the weather was really warm, I watered it very early in the morning to very late at night, and reveled in the disgusted, judgmental looks of people passing by, reveled in it. Oh, yeah, I just turned the pressure up on the hose as people were looking at me disgustedly. Yeah, just for that now. I'm going to put another 300 litres of water on the lawn. I don't care about the babies in Africa that are gasping. I couldn't care less about them in Pakistan. It's my lawn that matters. I'm very selfish like that, you see.
No, good for you. Good for you. It's quite funny because my brother, he's in the tri-services, and he was saying no water shortages. He said, they're there
Yeah.
squirting fires that have been out for hours, but keep it going, and gallons. But I'm presuming it's been lifted now anyway. But
Yeah,
yes,
I don't think it ever materialized up here. The interesting statistic for me during the whole, we must impose a hosepipe ban because we've had 3 warm days in a row. The most interesting part of all that for me was learning. Oh God, I should have written this down. I thought this might have come up actually, so I should have written it down. I think the country loses around about 5 billion litres of water either a week or a month through leakage. Because the companies that were sold the water, the family jewels, by Thatcher and Blair and others, they don't repair their pipes. So you're losing billions of litres a week or a month anyway. That's just England and Wales. It doesn't take into consideration Scotland. That's just mind-boggling. Don't be asking people not to use hoses. Renationalize the water and
but they've
get
got to put
lots of
some fear there.
yeah. Let's get lots of young men and women trained up to go and fix these pipes and give them 20-year contracts to go and do it. Little things like that. But yeah, no, it didn't come in up here, the hosepipe ban, which was funny because I wasn't joking about the judgmental looks from silly neighbours as I was watering my grass. But yeah, we get plenty of rain up here, as you're probably aware. We get plenty of rain up here. But other than that, can't complain. All's good.
No, I'm intrigued at what room you're in tonight, because I watched an interview the other day and it was a different room. And I see sometimes when you're in your living room, and I'm not a mad stalker or anything like that, but do you go in different rooms every time you do a
No,
live?
no, I did something with my great pal Mark Boyerski only a week or so ago. I was in this room, but I'm pretty sure I was further to the left
That
along
makes
the
sense.
bench, probably, yeah. So I'm using or indoors. I'm using her computer and her little stand that she's got for her computer today. So I'm a little bit further to the right. So everything you see in this room is belong to the missus. All of
It
it.
is crazy because,
Yeah.
because you are, and I know you're modest and you say, don't be daft, Shelley. And I say, Richie Allen, you're the king of radio. And when you do your little no, I'm sorry, you are. And you're like looking at your room, looking at your house, what's behind you, looking at your furniture.
Does it give any insights into your personality?
That
Not
you're a
not in
normal
this.
guy.
I'm a normal bloke. Like
Yeah.
everything. everything here, we moved in here in May 2019, and everything, apart from the sofas in the living room, which I put my foot down and said, no, I'm going to get what the sofas I want. Everything else in the house is chosen by and approved by the Minister for Home Affairs, as as she's known
And quite
locally.
rightly
So
so.
yeah, so no, that's her violin up there. I don't know if it still plays. It's her piano behind me and her saxophone over there. There's nothing in here belong to me, but I don't mind. I'm okay like that.
That's a nice little den. It looks good. It looks good. So tell us a bit, Richard. I'm sure you're a bit bored about this, but like for some of your viewers, your regular listeners, some of them, not many of them, but a few of them think that you're probably gone into retirement.
No,
It's been nearly a couple of months, hasn't it?
yeah, I having not really touched my studio for a few years. I decided last month, after thinking about it for quite a while, to build. I've always had this thing. I'm not ashamed to admit this. Nobody is perfect. I've always had this little thing about my own ability as a radio producer, first and foremost, and then as a presenter. And I've always had this chip on my shoulder about equipment and about wanting to have as close as damn it really to the equipment that you would expect to see if you walked down to Media City and walked into BBC Radio 5 Live. I've always wanted that. I've always felt I deserved it. I always felt I'm a better producer, a better journalist, a better presenter. So why shouldn't I have, the gear? And I had great equipment. There was nothing wrong with it. It was, it was BBC outside broadcast stuff. What I did have, but I wanted, pretty much close to as I said, closest, nearest, damn it, to the real thing. So I decided to go digital, and it was very problematic from the word go. Technical issues with the broadcast console, which I bought in from Italy, and it couldn't have happened at the worst time, really. Late July, early August. These companies don't have 20 of these on the shelf; they make them to order. And of course, in August, these companies disappear, not for 2 weeks or 3 weeks; they disappear for the entire month. And it meant that I was basically high and dry, really. And having dismantled all the previous stuff, it's just not feasible to put it all back together again. So I expect to be back in a couple of weeks, no later than that, with a state-of-the-art studio, some of which still has to arrive. It's coming from Denmark now, and will do in the next few days. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited about it, and really, really, really enthusiastic, and really keen to get back on, to be honest, because I've never had a break like this in my entire life. I've been working pretty much, even though I went to school and later on went to uni, I've been working since I was 14 years old. I've never had this much time off. Um,
So what are you doing with your days now? Are you still like glued to the news and stuff like that, or have you
yeah,
learnt to relax?
I am. Well, yeah. Well, I've relaxed a bit. Yeah, I took a holiday. I've managed to get some things done. Personally, in my personal life, family things that needed to be done, but never could be done because of the workload that I kind of took upon myself for so many years. But no, of course, I've been keeping in touch with what's been happening. I read the broadsheets and most of the tabloids. Most mornings I've read them by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I'm still doing that. I'm in touch with people, obviously, about coming on the show when it comes back. I'm working on the sound of the show when it comes back. It will sound different. There'll be a new sting and jingle package. There'll be new sweeps and stuff like that. It'll be at a slightly different time, the show. I'm not going to give too much away about that now. It'll still be a 2-hour radio show, but it'll be at a very slightly different time when I do come back. And I'll still be doing 5 live radio shows a week, 10 hours of live radio, in case anybody is a bit concerned about that. I will be doing 10 hours of live radio, 4 chat shows, and a music show. And I just can't wait to get back. I don't regret doing what I did, because I never regret anything. I just think improvise, adapt, and overcome. Things happen. Get on with it. Figure out a way to get around the mountain if you can't climb it or if you can't go through it. And I can't see why I wouldn't be back on air by the beginning of the 4th week of the month. I can't see anything that would stop that. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. And when I'm back on, it's basically I hate to use the cliche like business as usual, but that's the way it will be. Now, every radio show in the world, whether it's new, whether it's very, very, very old, whether it's been around a long time, it will always have fanatical listeners. And I have more than my share of fanatical listeners. So I get those emails from people who think that I've, just lost interest and this is some sort of kind of a long-winded goodbye. But nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, I've posted videos and stuff of the studio as it was being built and done. My engineer is not full time like yours. I don't have that luxury. But Paul Ripley from Fab Radio, has been talking about it. It's going to happen. It's just have to wait a little bit longer. But the worst of it is past this now. I mean, it's been 5.5, 6 weeks nearly since the last show.
And at the end of the day, I mean, it is what it is, isn't it? And I love that saying because there's just nothing you
Well,
can
that's
do.
right. Shit happens, if
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
swear. And what do? You get up. I've never been one to get upset about stuff like that. I can get upset about things, of course I can, but things like that, no. Nothing you can do. Getting fed up, getting worried about what people think. No, it'll happen, and when it does happen, I'll be happy. You know, I've never had, I've never felt so fresh, so rested in my entire life. Never. I've never had so much time off. So I don't look at myself very often, but I can see myself today. I can see in my face the difference compared to 6, 7 weeks ago. So yeah, I'm mad for it now, Shelley. So a couple of more weeks and then I'm back on. Yeah.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So, I mean, I want to know, and what a lot of listeners want to know, who is Richie Allen? Where did he come from? I know we've chatted briefly about this like a couple of years ago. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, tell us your story, Richie.
It's a very boring story. I
You
come
always
from.
you say that you're
No, but
boring.
it
You're
is. It's
far
very
from
boring. Well,
boring.
all of our stories are. When it comes to where we came from, as briefly as I can possibly be, I grew up in I suppose you could call it an estate called Ballybeg in Waterford City. That's in County Waterford. Fantastic place for children to grow up. It was a brand new estate. It was built in the very late 1970s. A lot of people who lived there, they worked in the world famous Waterford Crystal, which was just across the street. Working class young families, very young families there. Sports were a big thing. I lived across the street from a Gaelic football hurling pitch. I lived across the street from a soccer pitch. There was a boxing club up the road. There was everything. We as kids, we basically in holiday time we were kicked out of the house in the morning, and we didn't get back in till very late in the evening. Apart from obviously coming in for some meals, we just ran around. Went to St. Saviour's Primary School. It was a very, very good experience there. Later on, went to a high school called St. Paul's. I was very lucky. Both the primary school and the secondary school were, what do you call them, co-ed. So it was boys and girls. I never went to an all-boys school. And that was a great thing. Didn't do me any good, mind. I wasn't prolific when it came to dating. In my teens and early 20s, I wasn't. But those are good experiences, good teachers. Waterford is a great city. It's Waterford Ireland's oldest city. I think it might be. I don't want to be embarrassed later on now by some of your viewers and listeners calling me out. We might be the oldest city in Ireland. We're on the southeast. Beautiful Viking walls there, still standing. Reginald's Tower, great historical city. Just a bloody good place to grow up, really. I never had any interest in radio. When I got out of high school, I didn't immediately go to university. I took a year off, basically just arsing around, as we say back home. I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. I certainly had no interest in radio or the media. I was thinking along the lines of teaching, because I had a huge interest in history and in English, and I would go on to study history and English at third level. And I thought I'll end up being a teacher. But somewhere along the line, I ended up behind a DJ box at a well-known nightclub, playing music 3 nights a week till 2:30 in the morning. And from there, the manager of the local radio station asked me would I be interested in doing the late night shift at the radio, which is an amazing thing, really, for a kid to be offered. It was a very, very long shift. It was 1 o'clock in the morning till 7 in the morning. So it was 6 hours of live radio, basically just playing easy listening music through the night to the red eye people, the people working on shifts and stuff. And that's basically then, I don't want to keep saying basically, I'm terrible for saying basically. That's how I ended up in current affairs radio, because later on, the position of the producer of the mid-morning talk show came up, and I was always interested in current affairs. Back then, I was an idiot. I was interested. I believed that politics and political parties could make a difference. I actually used to believe this. Most of us did, I suppose. So my sympathies would have been with so-called left-wing parties like the Workers' Party, like Sinn Féin, and then the Socialist Workers' Party. The Socialist Workers' Party and the Workers' Party were two different parties. Labour to a lesser degree, Sinn Féin. And I was interested in stuff. So I eventually landed the job as producing the mid-morning show, which was a very big deal, a huge responsibility, because the show was huge. It's the show that everybody in the city listened to. And that's basically where I got my start in the media. And the rest is kind of history then, really. Apart from a gap here and there of a couple of years, it's pretty much what I've been doing, Shelley, making talk
How
radio.
did you progress onto the alternative side of things?
Just the dawning realization that reality was an illusion, that inviting politicians onto radio programs to talk about the cost of oil, or to talk about the I don't know, fishing prospects for Irish fishermen in EU waters, that this was nonsense, that it was ultimately a big charade, and that politics itself was a drama, was a production to keep people mired in the illusion that they were really in control of their own destinies. Now, I'm not saying that we are not in control of our own destiny. I'm not saying that at all. But it gave them the illusion that they could change their paradigm by exercising their so-called constitutional right, their human right to turn up at a ballot box on a given Thursday. That was the illusion we were selling in the media. Joining me on the line now is Mr. Joe Scully from the Labour Party. Good morning, Joe. And to debate with him, it's Emer Murphy from Labour, or from Fianna Fáil, whatever. A total illusion. It didn't matter. Both sides, whether they knew it or not, were progressing the same agenda. And it was that kind of dawning realization that led me, first of all, to walk away from it, because I was sickened by the knowledge, by what was going on. But later on then in Spain, to come back to it and to say, right, well, I've got some skills, that I learned in commercial radio. I've got some qualifications. Can I do radio and present this real reality to people in a way that they'll at least give it a shot? Like they might pay some attention to it. And it was in Spain that I did a 3-hour evening program where I introduced English expat audience, mostly mature, it must be said, and often very conservative, but to be fair to them, open-minded. I started introducing them to voices like the late great Jim Mars, who I loved the bones of, the great Texan, Alex Jones. I mean, Alex was fairly big then in the late 2000s in Texas, and he'd been syndicated out, but he was nowhere near what he would become. David Icke, obviously, and others, and robustly challenged these people. To say, come on, you can't be. The intelligence agencies can't be blowing up their own people, like, just to blame it on somebody else. That sort of stuff, and out of that, then that led me to going to London to work on a project that really never really got off the ground, called The People's Voice. And it was out of that I decided, right, build your own studio in your own home, broadcast whenever you feel like it, which was a nonsense. I knew I'd do it every night of the week, which or most nights, which I've been doing since 2014. And basically do what I was doing in Spain, but do it entirely independently of anybody, and be completely responsible for the output with no input from anybody else. That's very important for me. I mean, friends will say, "Hey, Richie, I was listening to Shelley Tasker in Cornwall, for example. She had a guy on. You might like him." Or I was listening to some guy in London, and he had a guy on. I think he'd be a good fit. So, of course, I'll have a listen, and I might invite somebody on. But yeah, I produce, edit it, introduce it, and that's how it works best for me. And that's basically as quick as I could be. My story. Lots of
It's all right.
lots of
There's no
stuff left
rush.
out. Lots of love stuff now. Failed romances, uh, jobs that were terrible. The
Tell me,
pitfalls.
what does the BBG stand for? For those that don't
So
know.
I was very lucky with the BBG. Actually, very lucky. I don't come up again. I'm not being modest. It's not my forte. Things that witticisms like that don't come to me that quickly. But I remember a few years ago, I just started to see the term gammon be used against people because they might have favoured Brexit, or they might have doubted climate change theory or whatever. And it came to me one day, BBG, big baldy gammon. And then the tagline, "It's the BBG, not the BBC," came to me. And I mean, that was a brainwave for me. I had to
That was
sit down for
brilliant.
for a while after that. It took me a while to get my energy back after that. Like, that nearly blew my mind. No, but yeah.
No,
So,
it's
so that's
it's
that's where it came
genius.
from.
Yeah, because
Well, it's the
me
only
and
time in
my
my life, because I sat around. Sorry to interrupt you, Shelley. You'd
no,
sit
that's right.
around thinking about stuff. Give me some. Like, I write the jingles for the show when I change them, and it's a nightmare because you're sitting there writing them. Right, broadcasting information the mainstream media won't touch. Oh, great, that's good, great. But you need 6 more of them. Then you can't think of them. And of course, I should farm these out to friends. I should say, "Well, can you come up with something?" But I don't, because I am a bit. While I'm a pretty open and generous bloke, I think, with pretty much everything else. But with the show, I jealously guard the show. So I won't put it out there to people. I should do. I might do in the future. But yeah, the BBG, not the BBC. Yeah, that was. Yeah, that was. I peaked there. That's it. Like, you won't you
It's
won't get that
genius.
again.
It's
Well,
genius. Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, it's good. It's good fun, and on the rare occasion when I do, when somebody shouts at me or points at me. I was in Manchester on Tuesday with Paul Ripley, and we got shouted at across the street from somebody in a car. BBG! It just made me laugh. I thought, it's not Richie, it's BBG. I thought it stuck. It stuck.
No,
So,
well, I
so
had to
yeah,
make sure earlier. I said to my other half, "What does that mean?" We knew it was big, boldy something, and he
yeah,
said,
yeah.
"It's
Git,
gammon, isn't it?" I said,
git.
"Are you sure?" I said, "Because I can't say that, and you think you're right, and
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
look
yeah,
like a
yeah.
fool."
No, you wouldn't
Yeah.
look like a fool. There's no harm
Well,
in
no, if
no
I
harm in
said
asking.
something
Yeah,
totally wrong, because I couldn't find it anywhere on the internet neither.
yeah, yeah.
Some of your listeners are probably Googling, what does the BBG
I get
mean?
asked. I still get asked.
Right,
I've been using the term for about 3.5, 4 years, or maybe
right.
4 years. But yeah, I still get asked. Rich, I listen all the time, all the time. What's BBG stand for? So when I say big baldy gammon, they just laugh. So, I should have got that, really. The big
So
baldy gammon. Yeah.
how long, and this is a bit, well, it's probably not because you're not shy. How long have you been, this is gonna come out totally wrong, without hair, bald?
Oh, Jesus. Mine started thinning on top in my mid to late 20s.
The
And
reason I ask is because 'cause I've got a family member, young, receding, and actually
he's
thinking
worried
about
about it.
getting a hair transplant.
Is he? Which are, which I
Somebody I know,
understand
yeah,
to
and
be
I'm like,
terribly expensive, right?
just about, I think it works out about £600 a go. So it lasts, you
Well,
have it done twice, but then
right.
I suppose a woman would, quite often a woman spends about 90 to £100 every 2 months getting their hair done. And if it's gonna give you that confidence, but it
Yeah.
must be awful being so young.
Yeah, I feel sorry for young guys. For some reason, I don't know what that is. It never remotely bothered me.
No,
Now that's the truth. I know there might be there's a possibility some people might say, that's not. No, it is absolutely true. And if my other half was my better half was sitting here right now, because she was with me, we've been together 20 years, she would say, yeah, it just never bothered me at all. I knew, you're in the shower every day, and it's uh, that wonderful scene from The Simpsons when Homer thinks back to when he started losing his, and he's in the shower and he's like this, and he comes up with a handful of hair and he says, "Ah, plenty more where that came from." but there isn't. Um, and I looked at the time. I just thought, well, okay, it's all right at the moment, but when it gets a bit noticeable, I'll just shave it, and I did. And that period was in Spain, funnily enough, around about 2007, 2008. And I started buying the. I used to go to the. Every town in Spain has a huge thrift store run by Chinese people. Every town in Spain has a thrift store that's always run by Chinese people. And if everything in there, you'll get a pair of clippers for €5, which is what I did. I started shaving it off and never gave a second thought to it. But yeah, I understand for young men, particularly, maybe it was, because I was in a stable relationship. I've never taken myself too seriously anyway. I haven't. I just never have done. I don't get too caught up in, my image. But I think maybe the stable relationship thing. But if you're young as a bloke and you are dating, I could understand how. But you've shocked me. I thought these things ran into the thousands.
No,
But
no.
they must be coming down in price then.
I think they have to be done more than once. I mean, I need to look into it. I was shocked the other week
Yeah.
when you mentioned it, but I was like,
Well, you've
oh,
got a head of hair like Brian May. You might donate some of it to yourself.
well, I'd like to say it's all natural, but I am at that age. Um, which is ironic as well, isn't it? I've seen one of my friends today and she hasn't got one grey hair and she's 5 years older than me. How dare she?
The bitchiness of that statement.
It is. When I saw my dad here a couple of weeks ago, I've got more white eyebrow hairs than him. I'm like, this is shocking. I shouldn't be telling these secrets.
No, it's so
I can't help.
ministry.
I don't care because I'm about as honest and as open as they can. If somebody asks a question, I'll answer it.
Give them a
But
straight answer. Ask me an
no,
honest question, I'll give you an honest answer. Simple as that.
yeah. So take away the hair dye, take away the eyebrow pencils and the makeup. I look like shit, like everybody else. So
Like everybody else.
well, take away. All these people think, oh, they look amazing, don't they? Take off all the fakery. And I mean, this day and age, I mean, they're all having their contour shots, aren't they? And and perhaps if I had more money, I would have all these things like eyebrows tattooed on and stuff like that.
You lost me at contour short.
Contours. Oh, when they
You lost
put
me.
stuff into your cheeks to make them rounded and
All
so
right.
your cheekbones got the right structure and stuff like
I
that.
do notice because I've been obviously off air and I've had a chance to do some things. I've spent more time in Manchester in the last couple of weeks than I've had done for the previous several years. And I love Manchester. I'm very fond of it. It was a great escape for me when I was younger. I never thought I'd end up living in the city or nearby, but I love the place. But I do notice, because I'm a people watcher like yourself, I'm interested in people and their mannerisms and, how they carry themselves. I do notice a lot of young women look. I mean, when I was younger, I'm sure that when I saw girls or women on the street, I'm sure that some of them were made up. I'm sure they were. But there's something else going on now. When I see girls now on the street, they don't just look like they've been made up. They look like they've had work done. And these are young girls. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Jesus, wow. I mean, I thought that was something that would happen, for women much later on, 40s, 50s, 60s. But if girls are in their 20s now or in their 30s getting stuff done, that can't be good.
It's the way of life, isn't it? I blame like YouTube and all the adverts and stuff like that. They've got to look perfect, haven't they?
And
And
the influencers.
the influencers, yeah. And it's all like, oh, I've got an imperfect nose, I've got imperfect this and that. And I mean, that's what most of their wages must go on. Personally, me, I couldn't be bothered. I do think sometimes a bit of Botox would be nice, but then if you got addicted to that, suddenly you stop having it. My God, you'd suddenly look bad, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Looking
yeah,
perfect
yeah,
for
yeah.
6 months, then
But
all
the
those
clinics,
wrinkles.
the clinics are everywhere.
Yeah,
I sometimes run from where I am to Old Trafford Cricket Ground. It's a pretty long run, so I'll go down Media City. I'll go along Broadway in Media City, and I think there's at least one. Let's say there's one. There's one plastic surgery clinic there, and there are several in Manchester City Centre. There's a couple in Liverpool. It must be a thriving business. But you could get into that in a very deep way and wonder. I mean, you just kind of hinted at it there about children's exposure to um, the media or their version of the media through their phones and through their devices and their tablets and TikTok and all of that stuff. Uh, and this feeling of not being good enough or not looking good enough, and then that leading on to doing that. Yeah, who'd be a parent? I mean, Jesus, you know, I mean, how stressful would it be? Uh, Yeah, I mean, we were on holidays in Wales and we were talking to people. We were talking to people who have children. They were asking us, do we have children? No, we don't. Hasn't worked for us, hasn't happened for us yet. Probably too old for it now. And I do mean that. At 47, it's not ideal, really. He or she turns 60, you're nearly, sorry, he or she turns 20, you're nearly 70. It's not ideal. But anyway, look. And they were telling us, yeah, hugely concerned they are about their own kids, spending pretty much all the time on the phones, nothing else really. Home from school on the phone.
It is such a hard one. I mean, my son's just turned 9 and we're like getting out of toys. And there's a tablet there. It's been some holidays because he's got older brothers and sisters. He's practically an only child. So they're all talking to each other. Part of me is screaming because I hate the whole digital side of it. Um, and the other part of me is like, everyone's doing it. What do you do? Is he going to be the only child that can't talk to his friends?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a really hard one. It's
No, there's
caused
no
a
good
lot of
answer to
sleepless
it.
nights.
Yeah, it's easy to be childless and judgmental. It's easy to be childless, to be judgmental and say, well, he shouldn't have it, or his time on it should be severely restricted. Um, when I know full well that the schools are actively encouraging them to be on these devices, to do their certain assignments on these devices, to read on these devices. I know this. I know this from speaking to people with children, from reading about it, from reading the Telegraph, particularly the Telegraph, which is very interested in this particular subject and the impact these things are having on children. So yeah, I wouldn't be judgmental about that.
I mean, YouTube and stuff, when my elder children were growing up, they knew more than I did. And they were uploading their own videos to YouTube. I didn't have a clue how it worked. And it's quite frightening, really, because you couldn't control it because we didn't understand it ourselves.
No,
Um,
no,
no, it is a frightening thing because I think now, I mean, I often wonder how many times a day do I pick up my phone? It's it's the worst habit ever. First thing
yeah,
we both do in the morning, pick up our phone, and I think this is awful. This is
yeah,
absolutely awful.
because we did survive previously. I mean, the excuse, and I've used the excuse myself when I'm going to check an email. Well, you managed quite well checking your emails before you had a smartphone in your back pocket or in a holder or whatever. You managed well enough. I was happy enough to go to an internet cafe to check my emails when I didn't have a laptop or when I didn't have a home computer. Quite happy. We survived without phones. I think that the days prior to mobile phones were blissful days. They
Yeah, I
were
do.
far more peaceful days because you got more peace. I'm not saying that I was a hermit. I wasn't a hermit. I had friends and we went out. But I was quite happy not to be contactable at the drop of a hat when I think back to it. My we had a phone in our house intermittently because she would run up bills and eventually it would be disconnected. Bills she couldn't pay and what have you. But there was a phone box down the road. And if I wanted to phone somebody, I had to get a 20 pence piece somewhere and go down the road and ring. Not being detectable or contactable or identified as to where I was. That was a great thing when I look back at it. We took it for granted back then, but now I think it was wonderful. I even remember when mobile phones became a thing. Not the brick phones now, but when they got smaller. I remember a couple of pubs in Waterford. One, the name of which escapes me. The landlady was so horrified by these things that she banned them from the pub. Because even back then in the early 2000s, before smartphones, before you could watch a video, before you could open an email, they were already at this texting bollocks. They really were, texting people for no reason. And a landlady of a well-known pub in Waterford, which, again, I'm shocked I can't remember the name of it, was a very early adopter of the whole idea of banning them and saying these things have no place in my pub. This is a place where I expect people to be playing cards, ballads to be sung by session musicians, people to be talking to one another. This nonsense, she couldn't get over it. It might be a pub called Philly Grimes, bar. It might be or might not be. And yeah, she was ahead of the game. She could see where it's going. And I had a pint of Guinness in a pub at the top of Eccles Old Road. My first pint of Guinness for about 2 years, a week or two ago. Uh, Gorgeous weather, beer garden. The missus is working. I think it was just before we went on our holiday to Wales. And I'm sitting there. Beer garden is packed. And I swear to God,
Yeah, yeah.
you're in a pub. There's people sitting next to you. There's people sitting around you. There's good-looking women over there. There's good-looking lads over there. You should be chatting each other up. I remember I told a story on the show one time when we got back to Manchester from London. I got on the magic bus in wherever I got on it anyway, Wilmslow Road to get me into the city. And there was a girl got on, sat down. Next stop, a bloke got on. Bus was rammed. Sat next to the girl, right near the driver. Two young men, a young man, young woman, good looking, both of them. I swear to God, the entire journey. Now, I had no success with women when I was that age, but I'd have been trying to say something, you know. I'd have been like, "How are you getting on? How you doing? Are you at uni? Which uni do you go to?" Just chance your arm, like. No, they never looked at one another. They were clicking away at the phone for the 10-minute journey into Manchester, and I just thought, that's tragic. In fact, here's the irony now. I'll be slated for saying this. I took a sneaky picture of them using a camera phone, ironically, so that I could make a point. I blurred their faces out, you know, and I put it on social media. I said, "Look at this. This is madness. This is madness, this." You know, I'd have been giving it the old Irish brogue and the old Irish charm, you know. I would have failed, as usual, but I certainly wouldn't have been looking at my phone. So, yeah, that was kind of a precursor of things to come. But
Yeah, the art of conversation has easily been lost, hasn't it?
yeah,
People
yeah.
just don't make conversation anymore.
I
But
don't see it anyway, Shelley.
no, well, the older people do, you know, they're stood at bus stops and things, and they haven't got mobile phones, so that they can, like, not be awkward. But what everyone does is when it's silent and they don't know what to do, they get their phone out, don't they? I do it
Yeah,
myself. It's a habit. It's like,
yeah.
you know,
But you're right.
use.
You're right about the art of conversation. United played Arsenal on Sunday. I went to the game. I'm within walking distance of Old Trafford, and for the first time in 20 years, I bought a membership, which entitles me to buy some tickets. Um, Usually about 40 quid, 42 quid a ticket. It's expensive, but you're not going to every game. I'm certainly not going to every game. Jesus, who could afford it? But I got a ticket for the Arsenal game. So I went to Media City on Sunday, an hour before the game. Weather was nice. Got a pint of IPA, and there's a bench. It's the only place to sit. There's two blokes at it. So I've got my retro United jersey on me like an idiot. I look like a complete idiot. So I said to the lads, "Am I okay to sit there?" They grunted at me, so I sat down. You're all going to the game. They're going to the game, and they're just sitting there grunting from time to time. And I said, "Things are looking up a bit now, lads, aren't they? Things are looking up a little bit. It's not as bad as it was at the start of the season." They were visibly disgusted, like that I would interject,
How
that
dare
I
you
would speak to
speak?
them. Yeah.
You're
Honestly,
interrupting their phone
I,
viewing.
I don't have an inferiority complex. I would think I don't go looking for stuff like that. But yeah, it just a sign of the times. Like, you're not with us. Who are you?
Yeah,
Why are you speaking to us?
yeah,
No, I'm
yeah.
not, mate. But but years ago, nobody was. Everybody was with everybody. Years ago, everybody was with everybody. Now with older people, it still works. Like we're on holiday, you're in Wales, you end up at a little garden, little beer garden, and you say to the people next to you, I tell you what, isn't this some wonderful bit of countryside? Next thing, you're into a lovely conversation. So there is that other side of it. It's not all doom and gloom either. But yeah, I wonder about people sometimes.
No, and I love a chat. That's what I do, and it's funny. I
Yeah.
mean, like, you wouldn't believe today, and I know you will say I'm just a normal person and stuff, but I do suffer with my nerves. Do you know, for the last week actually, and you'll know the film well, The Commitments. You know when he's always in the bath interviewing him. I've been like that with you in my head for the last week.
Oh, have you, Jimmy
Questions.
Rabbit?
So tell me, Mr. Allen. But it's nothing like that, which is good because once you get going, we can have a chat. But all day I'm like, I've got pages here, Richie, of things that I've written down that we can talk about. We've
Yeah,
all got, and actually, when I was speaking to somebody earlier, I was thinking, do you know what? This is chatting. This is what I'm best at. I hold
just having a
conversations
chat.
with
Yeah,
everybody. And
yeah, yeah.
sometimes I say, like, I look after a little lady and I'm with her two hours a day and I'm yap, 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 yap. And I leave there and I'm exhausted. And I think, have I exhausted her? I've tired myself out from talking. So, but
I'm
no,
your brother from another mother, I think. Yeah, look. I think it's nice sometimes to chat. Like when we do things like this, it's look the obvious thing to do, I suppose, is to get into what's happening in Ukraine, the change in Downing Street. Not that that will make any difference, of course, to anything, the climate change stuff. But there's going to be plenty of time for that in the coming weeks and in the coming months. There really is. You know, I'm still kind of half on, uh, not sabbatical mode, but kind of battery recharge mode. Like,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
looking ahead to what's coming and what we're going to be talking about. But I see it, you know, as a social person in Salford, which is working class community. Again, why do I say stuff like that? That's where it's kind of where I come from. I come from a working community, I suppose. Blue collar people, my people, as it is largely around here. And I know from speaking to people, many of whom don't have any idea what I do for a living and are not really that interested. They just chat. But I can tell that there's a there's a great deal of anxiety, a rising tide, I think, of anxiety in people at the moment because they have no idea why what is happening to them is happening and how bad it might get. I can feel it. It's palpable actually, with what's
I
going on.
found it last night. I'm ashamed actually because I mean I'm always for the underdogs anyway, and I'm fortunate. I've got a job. If I need to pay extra for gas and all of that lot, I do agency work. Oh, I'll do another shift. But
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
most people, they've already got one job. And to go out and get another job. And I was browsing through Sky News's website and I came across 7 tips of how to save money in the kitchen
From Sky News.
from Sky News. 7 tips, and they were basically when you've used your dishcloths, then use them in your bathroom so that you can recycle them that way. Wash out your plastic bags, your sandwich bags, reuse them. Use your bread packaging for sandwich bags. And the best one, when your cooker is cooling down, put a bowl of water in the cooker to warm the water. I know there was 3 other ones, but I laughed and I thought it was hilarious. And I just kept thinking about it. And I was thinking, this is close on really to like what it was like in the war when rationing and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then I really thought about it in bed last night and I thought, do you know what? It's they're advertising stuff like this. I'm all right, but it's not about me. There are going to be people that really are struggling, and I felt quite bad that I found it funny because actually there are going to be people that spare a
yeah.
pound to buy bloody sandwich bags to wrap your kiddies' lunches up in. A pound isn't doable,
And they've no,
you
undoubtedly
know.
it won't be. It won't be. So they've put it out there. Some of some elements of the press have put it out there. This idea of rationing energy in the winter and asking people, not asking them, but compelling people to use their washing machines at certain times and to eat at certain times and to even to shower at certain times. All this stuff that it's kind of spooky. In not so much spooky. I mean, I suppose on some level we knew this was coming, but during March 2020, during April 2020, during the first of the disgustingly dystopian lockdowns, uh, climate lockdowns occurred to me, and I suppose I never said energy lockdowns, but I suppose it's a natural progression. You know, energy lockdowns, right? We can't get as much gas as we want. The Russians, the pesky Russians, have switched off the taps again. Prices have gone crazy. We can't afford it. So, right, you're going to have to limit yourselves to maybe 3 showers a week and stuff like that. I know there will be obviously people watching this and they'll think, nah, we can't see that happening. That level of interference by the state, in terms of cooking food and stuff like that. I see it as a real possibility. You know, I believe that eventually what you eat and when you eat will be rationed, will be controlled, whether it's red meat, whether it's meat in general. So they're putting these things out there. They're scaring the bejesus out of the population with these horror stories about rising bills, which are true because the bills are rising exponentially. But they're also slipping in these conversations, these solutions. The idea that you could accept to be told that you can't use your washing machine uh, every day of the week, even if you need to, even if you have 3 children, young children, who need to have their clothes washed regularly, and you don't have too many changes of clothes for the kids. The idea that, as I said, what you buy in the supermarket might be rationed. So, yeah, this is the stuff. I think the rising anxiety that I think is so palpable around me, I think it's because on some level people can see this coming down the track at them. On some level they can feel this, that things are going to get. I speak to a lady who's got a German Shepherd. We have a German Shepherd. She knows about the show. I don't think she's overtly interested in the show, but she knows about it anyway. And this morning, this lady who's, gets her news from the BBC and is a pretty mainstream person, I suppose. This morning, she said to me, she won't mind me saying her first name. Her first name is Nicole. She said to me, I'm really worried about the way things are going, about how authoritarian it's becoming, she said. It's starting to concern me, the things they're talking about. And I said, I won't jump in with 2 feet there. It's the wrong thing to do, I don't do that. And I said, well, you and me both, And she hinted at looking to get away from it, like this person who's not into, reading some of the stuff that maybe you would read and I'd read, or listening to some of the people that you'd listen to and I'd listen to. But she was, she mentioned prepping, actually mentioned the word prepping. And I don't think she's ever heard the Shelley Tasker show. She's certainly never heard the Richie Allen show. But she talked about prepping and stuff. So that fear, it's getting through to people. And it's very interesting to me to observe that. I'm empathetic, so I feel sorry for them. But I'm also very curious to wonder how will they react to it then? Is there any hope of resistance to it when they start coming into your homes? I don't mean marching in with jackboots. I'm not saying that. But when they start saying, look, we're going to punish you if we find out that you're using your washing machine here, and if you're turning the gas central heating on here and you're turning it on above 19 degrees, we're going to have to intervene. I wonder at that stage will people say, well, hang on a second. I'm sure of one thing as I'm speaking to you tonight, Shelley. I've made a career out of not telling people the way it is, because I generally don't know the way it is. I don't know the answers. I don't know the reasons why so many things are happening. I have an idea as to why they're taking us down these roads. It's to do with control and making life on the planet almost unbearable for people, so that they'll accept a great reset or whatever you want to call it. I'm sure of that, but I don't have all the answer, but I'm sure about one thing. And I would be willing to bet my relationship, my house, my life on it. Climate change theory is the greatest hoax that was ever perpetrated against human civilization, ever. And I can say that because I don't know of anybody who's investigated it or read up on it as thoroughly as I've done in the last 10 years. Every book, even some of the academic books that claim that it's a real phenomenon, that man-made CO2 is leading to a increasing warming of the planet, which is ultimately going to make the planet largely uninhabitable, and all this. I've looked into it every which way. I used to believe it as an old lefty in the radio. I believed it because it was the thing to do, you see. This is the thing about identity politics. If you're in if you're on the left, well, you have to believe this stuff and you have to repeat it because you're on the left. And if you don't believe it, well, then you're a hateful right wing denier type of thing. But I've looked into it and I know, I'm not, obviously, we don't have time to get into it, obviously, tonight, but it's the one irrefutable fact. I'll take no nonsense on it from people. I get challenged from time to time when I'm out and about by people. I've had it from a local Green Party guy who knows about the show. Came up to me and I eviscerated the guy without shouting at him. I eviscerated him. I asked him to tell me about the CO2 content in the atmosphere. I asked him to tell me about the Harvard University and Yale University climate models and who wrote the models and where they came from, how they were funded. He couldn't tell me. And I said how tragic that is that a guy who makes a living out of telling people the planet's going to end you can't even spout your own propaganda because you don't know it. And if you did know it, you'd know it was nonsense. And I say this climate change because while I believe virus nonsense and horror stories about germs and NHS collapses will play some part this coming winter, I think the big thing now from here on in is going to be climate and the environment. And I would give anything. I'd give my right arm, to be honest with you, to get a national audience for the likes of Ian Plimer and others, scientists who've blown this nonsense out of the water for years, but have been banned by the BBC and Sky. I'd give anything for people to hear them, because when you lay out the simple facts about CO2 and where it comes from, it's laughable. The idea that CO2 produced by humans is warming the planet to the brink of extinction. And yet, it seems to me that if you're under 25 in this country, 99% certain that they believe it. Hook, line and sinker, they believe it. They believe that they're on the verge of extinction, that they won't have any planet in 25 years when they turn 50. So that drives me crazy. That's the only thing that's ever got to me, that in the 20 odd years I've been in the media, the only thing that keeps me up at nights is this bullshit climate change story and how easy it is to dismantle it.
I was going to ask you that question, what keeps you up at night? So now I
That
know.
one, that one, because it's so easy. CO2 makes up somewhere between 0.036% or 0.04% of the gases in the atmosphere. I don't have to tell your viewers what gases make up our atmosphere. But the liars in governments and their scientific clowns, the goons, they can't tell you how much of that 0.036% actually comes from human activity and how much of it comes from everything else, from animals, from volcanic sub-sea level volcanic activity. They can't tell you. The climate models don't mention the sun, not once. Not a single climate model mentions the effect the sun has on the atmosphere of the Earth and the effect the sun has on rising temperatures. According to the climate models, the sun doesn't have any impact on temperatures on planet Earth. That's ridiculous. It's beyond. Wow. It's beyond foolish.
It's not something that I've really looked into. Yeah. You obviously know your stuff, but no, it's fascinating.
Well, I don't. You don't, because I would have thought, before I really started getting into it, I would have thought, listen, the lingo is going to kill me. That's what I would have thought. I'm going to start reading into this, and the lingo, the terminology is going to kill me, because I'll be reaching for a dictionary or a thesaurus every few minutes. But no. It is that simple. It is so simple. By their own admission, there were times when there was far more CO2 in the atmosphere. This is predating the Industrial Revolution. By their own admission, we have had historical periods where there was far more CO2 and it was actually colder.
Right.
When the Thames froze over. There were times when it was so warm on planet Earth in the Northern Hemisphere, predating the Industrial Revolution, when they grew grapes in Yorkshire. There was no Industrial Revolution. There were no factories then.
No.
Thousands of years. No, look, I'm just giving basic little facts now, but it's the easiest lie there has ever been to debunk. And yet, day in, day out, Sky News run a show every day now called The Climate Change Show. And whichever presenter happens to be on, they'll have a chart. It's obviously it's digital, lovely big screen, lovely in blue, and they'll point and it's up there now in the corner. That's how much the planet has warmed in the last 100 years. Down there. And the figure is going up because they've got like 50 zeros on it, right?
Yeah.
So it's going up. And they're telling people watching, idiots, goons, their viewers, they're telling them, look, you can watch the planet warming on Sky News. And of course, we're still emerging from the last ice age.
This is what we miss on your show, your rants.
We need a rant, don't we?
When you slate Kate Burley and the other guy.
Yeah. Because I can't, that's genuine. I really can't believe that you don't have any shame. I used to be ashamed when I presented commercial radio, when I got something wrong or missed a question I should have grilled somebody with. And my producer would have kicked me in the arse. Or even when I did it to my presenter, there was a great sense of shame. You took such great pride in doing the job. And I know that Kay Burley, Dermot Murnaghan, Adam Bolton, Jane Secker, I could name them all day, Laura Kunsberg, the BBC, Emily Maitlis. I know that they know that what they're saying is untrue. That's another thing that keeps me up at nights.
But they're good actors, aren't they, as well? Their faces, they're so serious, the worry in their faces.
But it can't be the money, Shelley. It's got to be something else. Because you take Robert Pest on ITV, I mentioned already Burley. You have the Susanna and that other idiot Richard Madeley on ITV. It can't just be the money. And the reason I say that is because they will know that they are condemning their own families to this dystopian nightmare, which is around the corner. So it can't just be the money. And I've begun to wonder something that I never really considered before. We talk about politicians being selected and elevated into positions because they're compromised somehow along their journey. Boris Johnson, maybe 25 years ago, videos taken of him 25 years ago. Keep an eye on him. So it doesn't mean that they planned on him to be the Prime Minister 25 years ago. They might have a group of people, right? We'll get our Prime Ministers out of there. I'm beginning to think the same about journalists, about some of them. They must be.
I think you're right.
Compromised, yeah. But,
I'm going to have to cut you short there, Richie.
Yeah, I'm looking at the clock
now,
myself, yeah.
Some music is going to kick in, and there's nothing worse than cutting somebody off.
Kicked off.
Yeah, kicked off. But thank you so much.
Thanks for the chat, Shelley.
Thank you, and everybody else listening. Tune into the Richie Allen Show, and take care, my friend. We'll speak again soon.
Bye for now.
And I'll just say to other people, next week I'll be back with Malefica Scott. We are doing a new show called The Kerno Connection. So if you'd like to join us, it will be 9 o'clock next Wednesday for the first show. And thanks, Richie Allen.